Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and we are back with episode 2 of the MBN Mailbag. I know you guys complain, you say, oh James, you never continue these series that you do. Guess what? I actually got to an episode 2, and last week I spoke with the host of the Cannon Fire podcast, Mr. Rhett, and today I'm speaking with the co-host of the Cannon Fire podcast, Mr. Evan Wanish. Evan, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing very good, man. Now, for those of you who don't know and enjoy social media, Evan has an Instagram page, otherwise known as Bucs.wave. Just go follow it, like right now. Stop, pause the video, Evan. Go pause the video. Go follow Evan's Instagram page. I'm pretty sure it's the most followed Bucs news Instagram page on there. You know?
Yeah, I think the only one that's probably more is the official Bucs page. So
right, and I think you're even close to them. You know, so the point I'm trying to make is go follow Evan. He does a phenomenal job. He's literally on top of everything, like a freaking wizard. It's amazing, and I love it. So, Evan, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Of course, man, of course. So, we're going to get right in with these questions here. We're not going to waste anytime. We have a lot of stuff to talk about. And the first question actually comes from Harford Dropout from YouTube, and he asks this question. And actually, it's very topical considering what's been going on Twitter the past, 12 hours. And the question is this. Is Teddy Bridgewater a good fit for the Bucs offense, or should we keep Winston? Now, to go ahead and give some backstory here for everybody before we answer this question, Evan, Twitter's been blowing up today. A lot of people have been saying that, Teddy Bridgewater is the quote-unquote front runner for the quarterback race now, and now everybody's losing their minds, essentially, as we've been doing. It seems like it's been a revolving door of quarterbacks. For 3 days it's Rivers, for another 3 days it's Brady, for another 3 days it's Teddy Bridgewater, maybe for a day it's Derek Carr. Yeah, it's the Wild West, man. Everybody's saying a ton of stuff, but let's answer this question. So, Evan, is Teddy Bridgewater a good fit for the Bucs offense, or should we keep Winston?
So, I mean, here's the issue with this question is he a good fit for this Bucs offense like last year's offense? No, probably not, right? We've all seen that Teddy Bridgewater just doesn't have the arm that Jameis Winston does, and he's not really willing to push the ball down the field as much as Winston. However, if the Bucs are interested in Bridgewater, that must mean that they're willing to adjust their offense. So especially, if they sign him, they're gonna have to adjust their offense a little bit. So, yes and no. Is he the perfect fit for the offense? No. If you're talking about fit, I think Jameis Winston's probably a much better fit, but you also getting a lot less turnovers with Teddy Bridgewater. So I think that's sort of the two sides to that whole situation.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. We've been hearing for weeks now, and Lord knows that this next week can't get here soon enough, Evan.
Yeah.
We, especially as content creators, we're chomping at the bit more than anybody, because that means we can actually start, really getting into the meat of what's going on for this offseason. But the biggest thing I've seen all over the social medias for any of these speculative quarterbacks is they wouldn't be a fit. And it seems like people have been able to dispel any possible quarterback because none of them would be a fit, which is weird to me because I think when Bruce Arians got here, one of the first things he was talking about was fitting the players, or, fitting your scheme around your players, essentially, And I do think he does do that, not all the time, but I do think he does that for certain types of players and certain positions and whatnot. I feel like, if anything, he would want to mold the offense around the quarterback. That makes sense to me. So to say, I think you put it perfectly. Last year's offense, no, because that was kind of more, in a way, catered to a big-armed guy like Jameis Winston. Guy who can just chuck it downfield and just really make some bomb plays, some big yardage plays when he needs to. But if a different quarterback was to come in, like a Teddy Bridgewater, who's more of a, I don't want to say field general, but in a way, a little bit, he does have some mobility to him, and I don't think he has the weakest arm in the world, because that'd be ridiculous. But I do think that Bruce would make some changes to his offense to accommodate for Teddy Bridgewater if he brought him in. The second part of that question, or should we keep Winston? I mean, really, I think either one would be a good option. It just all depends on what Bruce Arians and, Buccaneers' preference is going to be.
Yeah, I think I'm a Teddy Bridgewater fan. Now, like I said, the fit isn't great, but to me, it all comes down to the money. If Winston is, keen on getting $25 to $30 million, and you can get a guy like Teddy Bridgewater for, let's say, $22 million a year, I would definitely be interested in that. But, we're going to find out here in less than 2 weeks, especially, obviously, they're not expected to place the franchise tag on Jameis Winston, but it's always a possibility, I guess. We'll find that out next week, and then the week after that, is the legal tampering and free agency opening. So.
Oh yeah, money talks, man. Money talks. It
definitely does.
If you can get a guy of similar, I don't want to say similar talent because I know it's going to fire some people up. But if you can get a guy for cheaper who you think you can win with, you're going to do that. I'll tell you one person who would be really excited, and I hope she watches this video. If the Bucs do get Teddy Bridgewater, my girlfriend, she has been pining for Teddy Bridgewater since the middle of last season. Since then, so she would be happy. But is Teddy Bridgewater a good fit for the Buccaneers offense? You can make that argument because the scheme would change around Teddy. But Evan, we are going to move on here to the next question here, and this next question comes from Eric Bartle. Should we go for Derrick Henry in free agency? I believe he will make it so there is not as much pressure on the offensive line. It also makes our offense more explosive and a 50-50 offense instead of throwing the ball all the time. Now, I mean, that's just more... It was opinion after the initial question, but the initial question, should we go for Derrick Henry in free agency? Evan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think Derrick Henry's an incredible back, but I just don't think it's realistic. I don't really foresee him hitting the open market. I think the Titans find a way to keep that guy from even hitting the market. And, he was so important to their success last year that I think just to, even let him test the free agent market, I think would be a risk that they don't really want to take. But, I mean, if they were able to sign him, I mean, it would transform the offense. He'd be a good complement for Ronald Jones, and obviously he'd get most of the carries. But I mean, it wouldn't necessarily turn into a 50-50 offense. Because I still think Bruce Arians wants to pass the football. He's not going to be a ground and pound guy. He's never been. So, but it would be more like 60-40, which in turn would lead to hopefully less turnover. So, I mean, I would definitely obviously have interest, but I just don't really see that as a realistic possibility because, one, he's going to get huge money, and two, I just don't even think he hits the market.
Yeah, if there's one player, on the Titans that isn't going to hit free agency, like it's not Jack Conklin, it's not Ryan Tannehill, it's not Logan Ryan. They aren't letting Derrick. He literally, Evan carried the team.
Yep.
That entire playoff run, he was more valuable than a Ryan Tannehill in that series of games. It was insane how valuable he was. Freaking rushing leader. He's not going anywhere. I saw a report, which I don't know if it's true, but I saw a report that said, Ezekiel Elliott's contract was like the floor for Derrick Henry's negotiations, which no idea if that's true. Because, I mean, geez, oh my God, he'd be making so much money. But, Derrick Henry has a legit chance to just kind of reset that running back market a little bit and really bring back some value for that position, which I think would be huge for those guys. But no, they just can't do it this year. It'd be like the Bucs letting Shaq Barrett go to the market. It's just not happening. I mean, hey, yep. I'm biased Shaq Barrett guy, but and plus I just, and in terms of the whole Ronald Jones stuff, I mean, I'm biased. I just made a whole video as to why Ronald Jones could be a starter, so we don't need him. But should the Bucs go for Derrick Henry in free agency? He's just not going to be there, I'm afraid. But Eric, good question nonetheless. Evan, now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next question. This one's going to be a little fun. This one is going to be a little interesting. This is from Gavin Spenks, who sent an email. He goes, "Hey, James, I'm a big fan of your show. You're always super insightful, and I'm looking forward to the 2020 year." Thank you, Gavin. He says, "I hopefully have a fun question for you. As you know, the Bucs are getting new jerseys this year, so what changes are you wanting to see? New logo, new colors, etc. Thanks, man." So, Evan, what do you want to see?
Yeah, I personally like their logo right now. I don't think they need to change their logo. I also don't think they should probably change the helmets. I think the helmets and logo should stay the same. I think they look clean, color scheme's good. No reason to change that up. So the uniforms. And actually, me and Rhett have talked about this on the show, a little bit. So Rhett posted some on the Cannon Fire podcast page that was like an updated version of the Super Bowl ones with like newer numbers, and those would be my choice probably.
I've seen them. I love those ones so much, man. Those are phenomenal. How good those are.
Yeah, they're definitely good, and it also came with an alternate, which was a creamsicle with, I believe, red numbers, and then a pewterish with, I believe, white or red numbers. So, if they rolled out with those plus kept that helmet, I think that'd be one of the best looking uniforms in the league. But I don't think they should make any changes to the logo. Logo's fine, helmet's fine. It's just tweak those uniforms a little bit.
Oh, yeah, man. Because, I know the rumors were out there. People were speculating when the Bucs dropped that teaser video that the logo at the end was the pirate ship. So people have been speculating, like, oh, is the pirate ship logo going to be the new main logo? And then I believe the draft hats came out. What was what it was. They leaked a photo of what the draft hats are going to look like. The Bucs logo was still the same.
Yeah.
So I think they are going to keep the same logo. I don't know, man. I mean, do you remember the old Bucko Bruce where he had the sword in his mouth and the hat?
Of course.
I kind of want to see a Buck skull version of that. Not so much that it's orange, like a creamsicle orange and white, but like the current logo's colors, except with with a skeleton Bucko Bruce. I think that looked kind of cool. I know people would probably give it crap because, hey, but I think that'd look kind of cool if I had to name a change. And in terms of colors, I mean, I like our colors now. I think they're fine. I wouldn't say like, give us all black uniforms, or give us all pewter uniforms. That's it. We're done. It looks awesome. Like what you said. And if you guys haven't seen it yet, seriously, go out of your way to look up the updated kind of Super Bowl era uniforms that are out there. It's all over Instagram and Twitter and everything. They look phenomenal. Just kind of, I like those designs. I'm with you and Rhett, Evan, when, it's like, those designs are amazing. I want them in my life. And I hope that's what they go with. We'll see. But if I had to make one change, I don't know, kind of an updated skeleton Bucko Bruce would look kind of cool. All right, Evan, we are moving on to our next question here. This question comes from Warren King, and this is kind of a general question, but I do think this is worth addressing. What moves do you think need to be made for us to make the playoffs?
Well, I mean, I think number one thing is they got to improve the offensive line. I don't think you got to find a starting right tackle. And you got to improve the depth. I don't really think you need a starting right guard, an upgrade there, but over Alex Kappa. But I mean, if you can get a guy, why not? But personally, don't believe you need that. I mean, they need a right tackle. They also probably need, I believe they need a complement for Ronald Jones. I like Ronald Jones a lot, but I think that right now, like, his role should be maybe not, like, I don't know, like, his role should be to come in and, like, I liked what they did early in the season, and they sort of got away from it later in the season. Peyton Barber was in, like, the beginning of games, like the first half or so, and then Ronald Jones came in the second half and really started to gash them. He did it with the 49ers, did it with the Giants, so I like that strategy. I think they should find a as much as you can, add depth in those places, and then obviously the biggest one, you can't have a quarterback that throws 30 interceptions.
Shots fired!
Yeah, I mean, it's the obvious one,
It's accurate.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you're not going to win. You're not going to go to the playoffs. You're not going to sniff the playoffs with a guy who throws 30 interceptions. And I don't think Jameis Winston is going to throw 30 interceptions no matter where he's at next year. Right. But if he is in Tampa, he can't. You can't do it. He just, it cannot happen. Then that's if it's Tom Brady. Tom Brady can't throw 30 interceptions. Phillip Rivers can't throw 30. Teddy Bridgewater can't throw 30. You can barely even throw 20 and expect to make the playoffs. I mean, that's just, it's too much. There's too many turnovers. You're putting your defense in too bad of a spot, and you need more consistency out of that position and more stability there.
Yeah, I agree. Evan, it's funny because one thing I've noticed from listening to the Cannon Fire podcast for so long is the affinity that both me and you have for not just building starting offensive linemen, but for the love of God, get us some offensive line depth. We need it so bad, and it was really prevalent last year considering the injuries that DeMar Dodson suffered. And Alex Kappa, who broke his freaking arm. Earl Watford came in. I think he played not great, average to maybe a little bit below average. Oh God, Josh Wells.
Josh Wells, sort of thrown to the fire in that Carolina-London game, but then I believe had another shot and didn't really do so well either. So
and they traded for Gerald Hawkins after the end of the preseason. That man was inactive for half the season. So it just kind of makes you think, like, well, what are they going to do with him? Maybe he'll be a camp body next year. Maybe he won't. We'll see. But the glaring needs at depth for the offensive line was huge, especially, Donovan Smith showed a little bit of, he wasn't out. Did Donovan Smith miss one game last year?
I believe he did. I believe it might have been that Carolina game. It might have been that Carolina-London game. Because I remember there was a bunch of tweets that were going off like, oh, a world without Donovan Smith is what it looks like. Because like Donovan Smith gets like a lot of unwarranted hate. So I do recall. So I believe he missed a game, which I believe would have been his first in his career. So
right, that's what I was gonna say. Was it broke his Iron Man streak? But like it still shows that like, hey, injuries can happen to any of these guys. So you got to be prepared. Michael Lidke coming back, I think, will be huge considering, he got hurt before the freaking season started, and Bruce seemed to be pretty excited about him as a backup O-lineman, especially he felt that, he could play a lot of positions, which, Michael Lidke's probably going to get a shot as well, but you just got to add more. I wasn't too impressed with a lot of the backup offensive linemen we had. So that'd kind of be step one for me, just building up the trenches again. Like you said, DeMar Dodson, is he 35 now or 36?
I believe he's 34, about to be 35.
Okay, so you've got to replace him. If you want to bring him back, cool. Hey, he can be a depth backup piece. Have him be the backup, but you've got to get a new starting right tackle. DeMar Dodson age is slowing him down more and more, and it's becoming more and more apparent as time goes on. Like you said, Alex Kappa, he was solid last year. Definitely strong. Definitely, had a freaking will of iron. Played, half of a game with a broken arm.
Yeah.
I couldn't even fathom that.
Absolutely not.
And he just goes, "Oh, it's just a bruise." No, Alex, you broke your arm. Oh, okay. So that's kind of the first step as well for me, is building up that offensive line. Second step, you got to figure out the quarterback situation. You got to. Be it Jameis Winston or bringing in another guy. If you want to make a crazy Super Bowl move, like, oh, let's get a Tom Brady, or, hey, let's see what Phillip Rivers can do for his last 2 years. Then try that if you want, but you got to figure that out. Retain your defensive free agents too, Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul. I don't think the defense needs a ton of work. It just is a matter of bringing back some of those guys,
I do think they could use some depth at almost every position.
Right.
But like, if you ask me, I think like depth is one of the most important things in football. So that's
a fact. That's a straight up fact. Because look at Jason Pierre-Paul with his injury. And the bevy of injuries that the secondary suffered last season. So you would say depth everywhere. Look at the Eagles. The Eagles have been touted as having just this insane amount of depth for years now. And that helped them win a Super Bowl. So, just bringing in depth. I mean, they won a Super Bowl with their backup quarterback. Because the rest of their team's depth was just so solid.
Yeah, the amount of injuries they had last year, and they still ended up coming together and making the playoffs. So, I mean, depth can win you games still. So
yeah, so I agree with you on that. Figuring out depth. Get a starting right tackle, figure out the quarterback position, especially figure out that depth on the wide receiver core, man. Because after Evans and Godwin, Scotty Miller, that's, he's fine, but his hammies are, what's going on with those? And then just everybody else, man. I mean, Justin Watson, I just feel kind of bad for him at this point, considering just the kind of downward slope he went on in terms of, like, seemingly not really knowing what's going on a whole ton. I think I saw on 3 occasions him just getting yelled at on the sideline during different games. It's just like, ooh, That's not good. So
Yeah.
that might just be like a thing that they do to all the players. I don't know, but it's never good.
Yep.
You know, and especially if Rashad Perriman leads, you got to figure that out.
Yeah, a lot of people don't really realize how big of a need a wide receiver 3 would become if they lose Rashad Perriman, which I believe is becoming more and more likely.
Yeah.
Because I just think that he's gonna get maybe a 2-year deal, 3-year deal for $7-8 million a year.
Yeah.
And the Bucs just aren't going to be able to pay that. So, I mean, I know it's another factor. The reason they might let Perryman go is because it's such a deep wide receiver class. So, no, if they don't go out and sign a free agent wide receiver to be the third guy, no, that doesn't mean they're going into the season with Scotty Miller and Justin Watson. That just means that in the 4th or 5th round, they're likely drafting one because, I mean, it's such a deep class. You can find a third wide receiver in the 4th round.
Yeah, no, Bruce Arians' quote, I believe, was they asked him, like, oh, what position group has you the most excited? He goes, wide receivers. Oh, my God. He goes, you can literally get any kind of wide receiver in this draft. It's so deep. And I know they're talking about 35 wide receivers potentially be taken in the top 3 rounds. Holy crap. You know, that'd be unprecedented. So, insanely deep wide receiver class. I don't think I expect them to take more than one wide receiver. Just simply because they're going to get somebody else in free agency to help. Yeah,
they'll probably get a depth piece. I would guess they're going to try to get a guy that can come in on a cheap deal that can also maybe play a little bit of special teams. So we'll see.
Right. And just real quick note, by the way, one thing I want to point out that has probably been one of the most beneficial things to Jameis Winston's career so far up to this point, or not beneficial, just interesting. He gets his third wide receivers paid.
Yeah,
he does. Adam Humphries just got $10 million a year. Rashad Perriman's probably gonna get around $7 million. Jameis gets those guys paid, man. I don't know how that's interesting. Hey, that's a point for Jameis there, man. He gets those guys paid. But yeah, definitely, I agree with you on that. Add depth everywhere because that's huge. You know, injuries are a thing, and you got to be prepared for that. Evan, we are going to move on to our next question here. Second to last question, by the way. Hey, James. This is from Superfly Toad, by the way. Hey, James, how many total guards and tackles do we need to draft to make the O-line a dominant strength of the team? I want an elite line for once. Go Bucs. I'll just answer this real quick. Get all the offensive linemen. All of them, you know, and I know that's boring because it's not the glamour pick, because it's not a a skills player, a pass rusher, cornerback, whatever, you know, but Lord, offensive line's huge, you know. Get a tackle in round 1 to replace DeMar Dodson. Get some backup guys in the middle rounds. You know, I think you're fine. You know, I would maybe even be on board for, say, maybe three at most offensive linemen to be drafted in this draft. Maybe one in the super early rounds and then a couple in the mid rounds. Evan, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think this is where they should really use free agency and the draft to their advantage to try and improve the depth. So, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I think you got to find your starting right tackle at 14. If not at 14, you got to draft in the second round or maybe trade up, whatever you got to do. I think you got to land the starter there. And then, when you get in the later rounds, the third and fourth round, there's a bunch of guys. I would probably steer against drafting another tackle. I would look to go inside, maybe a guy that can play guard and center, because Ali Marpet can play a little bit of center, but what happens if Ryan Jensen goes down? There's not a whole lot of experience there. I know last year during the Detroit game, Jensen was hurt, and he came off for a minute, but the Bucs called a timeout. Earl Watford was practicing snaps, but Earl Watford might not even be back. So they definitely need somebody with center experience, and there's a bunch of guards in this class that can play both. So I would say probably in my Bucs mock offseason, I actually signed 2 backup offensive linemen and drafted 2 offensive linemen. So if I were running the team, that's probably what I would do. Sign 2 offensive linemen free agency for depth, get your starting right tackle at 14, and then in the third or fourth round, get the guy that can play guard and center, and potentially even replace Jensen once obviously his time comes to an end here.
Yeah, man, I agree. I think It sounds weird, we just keep on saying I agree, but
Yeah.
it makes sense. It just makes sense to build up the depth in free agency and in the draft, man. You got to be prepared for this, okay? You got to be prepared for injuries, especially at the offensive line.
They're going to happen. They just, it's part of the game.
Yeah, 100%. And replacing, I think, if anything, you got to take a tackle round one. Even if you just draft one offensive lineman, the entire time, if you just get one, I would say, definitely look at offensive tackle in the first round. And there's some names out there. I know Josh Jones out of Houston. That's a name that's definitely been floating up as of late. I know you're a big fan of Mekhi Becton, like a huge fan of Mekhi Becton. I don't blame you for that one. The guy's an absolute monster of a man. He's special. He might go top 10.
At the end of the day, I think he's either gonna, he'll either go top 10 or like the Jets are sitting there at 11. They might take him, but there's a lot of other guys. There's such a deep class there with the top 4 or 5 guys. Andrew Thomas from Georgia, I'm a big fan of. Tristan Wirfs from Iowa. Jedrick Wills from Alabama. I think if one of the top 4 per se, the top 4 are Becton, Thomas, Wirfs, and Wills. If one of those 4 are there, I think the Bucs would take one of the 4. If they're all not there, I think they would consider Josh Jones. I don't think it's a slam dunk that they would take Josh Jones. I think they would probably look to maybe. Smart thing would be maybe trade back. So let's say, like a lot of teams want to get ahead of Denver to try and get Henry Ruggs. You're sitting there at 14, Denver's at 15. Maybe a slide back of Buffalo's, a team that could have interest in Ruggs. They're sitting at 22, maybe a slide back to 22 and pick Jones there, pick up another pick or 2. I think that'd be smart if all 4 of the tackles are gone. So, we'll see what happens. But, I agree with you. You got to pick at least one, and it's got to be that tackle in the first round, I think. If not, you better be trading up, late first, early second to try and get another guy because you definitely got to secure it.
Yeah, and I know people are going to say, if we need a starting tackle, let's go for like a Jason Peters or a Trent Williams. That's not what it's necessarily about. It's about just getting a new rookie, new young guy, who can say this is our guy for at least the next 4 years. With those older guys, you don't know if they're going to last 2 years, 3 years, but with a first round draft pick rookie, they're going to be there 4 years and then hopefully longer.
Well, it could even be 5 because, if you're at the first round, you get that 5th-year option. That's big. But a lot of people are like, oh, Trent Williams, could the Bucs get Trent Williams? Look. The reason they're not going to get Trent Williams is, 1, it's going to, Washington's not just going to give him away. And 2, he's going to want a new contract. And the Buccaneers already have 3 offensive linemen, 3 of their 5 offensive linemen making $10+ million. Okay, Ali Marpet, Ryan Jensen, and Diamond Smith are all making $10+ million. They're not going to add another offensive lineman that's making $10+ million. That's not a smart way to build your team. You can't have that much money dedicated to one spot. You gotta. The good teams are able to find guys on cheap deals or draft rookies that are productive and cheap for the next 4 or 5 years, and that's how they can build a team. Building your team by getting a guy Trent Williams, while Trent Williams is good, that could prevent you from bringing back Jason Pierre-Paul, and then maybe that could hurt you down the line if you're negotiating with somebody else. Maybe. Who knows? Chris Godwin next year. What if you're a few $1 million short for Chris Godwin, but you gave Trent Williams $16 million a year? So it has repercussions. But Trent Williams is a heck of a player. It's just it's not smart, business wise. Football wise, sure, but it's a business first, and that the money matters. So that's why the Bucs aren't going to go out and they're not going to trade for Trent Williams or sign a big time tackle. If they do anything signing wise or trading wise, it'll be for a guy making like $2 million, $3 million because that'll just be a death piece. So the tackle, I agree with you there. I think it would definitely come in round 1, and that's where I expect it to come.
Now, Evan, we are now down to our last question of the night, and it actually comes from Ren Daxt of the Pewtercast. Whoa, that's pretty good. Now, he asks this question. It's a very simple question, very short question. How do you feel about the Winston contract situation?
So, I think a lot of it, right now is playing the leverage game, kind of. I do think that Winston's price is way high for the Bucs, and then I think that the Bucs obviously I don't think they have completely shut the door on Jameis Winston, but I also think that they've pretty much decided that, hey, like, here's the price we're gonna have this guy at. If he wants any more, we can't do it, right? Like, we're not gonna do it. And I think Jameis has basically said, look, here's my price. Can you guys get anywhere close to it? If not, I'm going to go out, test the market. And it seems like the Bucs are going to allow him to test the market. Because the rumor, is that the Bucs really don't believe there's going to be much of a market. And, I mean, if Jameis's price is $27 million a year, James, can you name me any teams that are going to be offering him $26 million a year besides the Buccaneers?
It's tough. I know you can make a lot of speculative guesses, like the Colts and the Chargers and the Raiders. I know I've seen some people float around New England, but honestly, I mean, there's probably a reason they're not going to be able to pay Tom Brady. They got to pay guys like Kyle Van Noy and Devin McCourty as well, so they might not even have the money to sign Jameis Winston. There's only a very couple of teams, depending on what the Titans do with Ryan Tannehill, maybe they make a run for Jameis, but in terms of that, there's not a ton of teams out there who could pay it. But I guess if I had to be speculative and say like maybe two teams, I guess I would say the Colts and the Chargers.
Yeah. Just like you said though, there's not a lot of teams that can or be willing. Like the Colts have a ton of cap space, but I mean, would they really rather pay Jameis Winston $27 million or just stick with Jacoby Brissett for another year, or draft Jordan Love or Justin Herbert at 13? You're sort of comparing the two, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, yeah. And from the Buccaneers side of things, they're thinking, well, if we're going to let this guy go to the open market, and this is why they're really evaluating every quarterback option because they feel that they have to. If they're going to let Jameis Winston go to the open market, then and if they don't believe he's going to have a strong market, if they think that somebody's going to not pay him a lot, then why are the Bucs going to?
That's what I was just about to ask you.
If they think the highest offer he's going to get is $8 million for 2 years to be a backup, then why are the Bucs about to pay him $22 million? And I think that's really what's holding up the Bucs, and obviously the new CBA and stuff that has yet to be approved. That has also have been a major factor in it, but right now I think it's just a big game of chess. And like I said, we're going to get an answer here in about 2 weeks. And somebody said, okay, well, maybe Bridgewater's like a decent backup. Now, if you get the news that Teddy Bridgewater signed a deal with Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that means that Jameis Winston is gone. And I would guess he's probably a backup somewhere because it doesn't seem like he's going to get starter money any other place besides Tampa Bay.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. It is. I mean, I've seen a lot of people say the Bucs are bidding against themselves, which could be very true, which is why I think that they're so confident in saying, go Jameis, go. Your price tag is super high. We're not really willing to pay it. So let's go see how much you're truly worth. And could be interesting because there is always that chance where, a really desperate GM who's really trying to keep his job says, you know what, 30 touchdowns, 5,000 yards, let's go, because we've seen that before. General managers can get really, really desperate. Look at the Le'Veon Bell signing. Look at the Tremaine Johnson signing. This is all Jets examples. But, there are teams that have gotten really... look at the Jaguars. Look at how much money they gave Nick Foles. They gave Nick Foles $22 million.
They're regretting that right now.
Oh, yes, they are. So, there are desperate GMs out there. And Winston, everybody says the Winston's upside is his best factor right now, his best negotiating point, I guess you could say, whatever you want to call it. And there could be a GM out there who would say, you know what, let's go. Let's roll the dice. If it doesn't work, hey, I'll probably get fired anyway, so who cares? you know, and if it does work, awesome. So maybe you see that mentality, although that is kind of a rare thing in today's NFL. If this was like maybe, I don't know, 5 to 10 years ago, oh yeah, somebody would probably be giving Jameis Winston a big contract because they were rolling the dice all the time, not too long ago. But man, it is going to be really interesting to see what happens. It does definitely seem like he's destined to be, at least testing the waters and see what happens with that. I think you said on Twitter the other day that, you said this is interesting, but man, the Bucs are playing a dangerous game.
Yeah, I mean they are.
Yeah, they are. They really are, because there's doomsday scenarios where, let's say, their top two targets are Brady and then I don't know, like a Rivers or a Winston. What if they don't get either one of those three guys? What if they whiff on Brady? Jameis goes, "That's cool. I'm leaving. See you later." The Colts offered me more money, or the Chargers did. I'll see you guys around. And Philip Rivers says, "Well, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna go do whatever too. I mean, I'm gonna go join the Colts." Let's just say Philip Rivers joins the Colts. Jameis Winston says, "Hey, the Raiders or the Chargers are giving me good money. I'm going to one of them." And then Tom Brady says, "I'm either going back to New England or I'm going to the other team that didn't sign Jameis Winston." That would be interesting. And I think that, obviously there's still good options out there. There's like a Teddy Bridgewater and, there's still some other guys out there. There's always the draft as well. So my thoughts on the Jameis Winston contract situation is, like what you said, it's a dangerous game, but I really do think there's enough positive options out there to where I think, like, they'll be okay whatever happens.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have asked me, like, what happens if, they miss out on Brady, Rivers, Winston, Bridgewater? Because, I mean, I'll bet pretty good money I think one of those guys is going to be the Buccaneers quarterback.
I would assume so. That would be...
I think I would bet pretty good money one of those guys, one of those four, is going to be the Buccaneers quarterback. So, I mean, what happens if all of them are gone? And I responded with it, I think that's an unlikely scenario. But in that case, it's not the most popular name, but there's trade candidates. Andy Dalton, I believe Case Keenum's a free agent. I understand that, like, you can't really get excited about, like, a guy like Case Keenum, but like I said, I just think it's a pretty unlikely scenario. I don't think, like, they're playing a dangerous game, absolutely, but I think that they would be playing this game if they didn't think that they were going to end up with one of these four guys. Like, right. If, let's say Winston is their third option, Brady's one, Bridgewater's two. Let's say they sort of get the sense, Brady's not coming to town, then they turn their attention to Bridgewater, and, maybe they offer him, one time says no, another time says no, and they don't play a game. They quick get out of it and get back to Jameis before, because, I mean, Jameis, hey, once the 16th hits, Jameis is a free agent. I mean, not officially, but the tampering period begins, right? Yeah. Tampering's obviously already going on, but the official tampering period, and nowadays with the NFL, that official tampering period day, you're going to hear a lot of deals announced on that day, instead of, like, when free agency actually opens. So, I mean, what is he? He's not. I mean, he may come back to you and be like, "Hey, I got an offer. Like, what do you think? Like, are you going to match it or not?" But I mean, he doesn't have to. Like, he doesn't have to tell you nothing. If you're sitting there negotiating with Teddy Bridgewater, and this is why it's a dangerous game, if you're sitting there and let's say you offer Teddy Bridgewater and you think that, you're still talking to him, Jameis can be doing whatever he wants. Like, he can be talking to the Chargers or the Patriots or the Titans or the Colts, one of these teams, and he could just be negotiating a brand new contract for himself, and there's nothing the Buccaneers can do because they can't say, "Hey, no, wait a minute. No, Jameis is a free agent now." That's the risk that you took, and it could backfire. Will it backfire? I don't think so. I think, like I said, I think they know that they're going to end up with one of those four guys. Jameis Winston, Tom Brady, Philip Rivers, Teddy Bridgewater. One of them guys is going to be a Buccaneer. One of them. I think if they didn't know that, if they weren't sure about that, I don't think they would let Winston hit the open market. But I believe that they're confident enough to let him do this. So I think they'll end up being just fine. But I mean, it's a pretty risky game.
It is going to be interesting because what do you know? I imagine the longer that Jameis Winston's free agency drags on, the worse it gets for him. In a way, I would think, because I don't know, it could go either way. Because obviously, maybe there's one team who's kind of left without a starting quarterback, and then Jameis Winston comes in and says, "You guys don't have anybody. Here I am."
Yeah. That team might be the Buccaneers. That's
right.
That's the funny part.
That's what I mean. But if the Bucs are one of those teams who grabs a different quarterback first, that might benefit Jameis to wait out. But also on the flip side, if he comes right in, and says to these other teams like, "Hey, all these other guys are going different ways. You better get me now before you lose me, or before you lose a chance." So I think Jameis will have a compelling case for some of these teams for negotiating contracts. But like what you said, it's like is it The Bachelor? I don't know. It's one of the it's one of those things.
One of those shows.
Yeah, it's one of those shows where there's multiple guys sitting there and. The main person has options, and the Bucs, it's going to be Bridgewater, Winston, Brady, or Rivers, one of them. Yeah. I guarantee you that. So yeah, I think they'll be fine. And what are my thoughts on the contract situation? Dangerous, but very, very interesting for everybody involved. It's risky for Winston. Because he's going into the unknown as well. Probably more risky for Winston. Because the Bucs are saying we'll give you $22 million. I don't want that. I think I'll have a better market. Okay, go see what your market is. Jameis, we'll give you $10 million. Oh no. Oh no.
And then he goes back to the Bucs, but the Bucs have already signed Teddy Bridgewater for that exact same deal.
Right.
So, the $22 million, and that's where it backfires on Jameis. So it'll be definitely be interesting. But
yeah, it's risky for a lot of people, man.
Yeah.
This is gonna be interesting. We'll have it under a freaking magnifying glass as always. Yep. Evan, I don't know if you've noticed, but Jameis Winston, I think he went to the dog park today. And I think so, and I believe he was wearing a Bucs shirt.
Was he wearing the Bucs shirt with the LASIK glasses? And
I think so, which makes me believe he's coming back. Now that's just a joke. It's just a joke. Nobody DM me, please. But guys, thank you so much for watching this second episode of the MBN Mailbag. I hope you guys all enjoyed. Evan, thank you for being on, man. Greatly, greatly appreciated. It's awesome. You do an awesome job as the co-host of the Cannon Fire podcast, and also running the best Buccaneers Instagram page on the entirety of the Instagram platform. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, what are you doing on this video? Go to Instagram right now. If you don't have an Instagram account, that's fine. It takes like 5 minutes to make one, and then you can go ahead and you can go follow Bucs.wave on Instagram. It's great. It's so simple. It's so lovely. And you know what's even easier? Since you're already on YouTube, go check out the Cannon Fire podcast, because guess what? They have a YouTube channel. Isn't this great? It's just social media, man. It's just everywhere.
Yeah.
Thank you, Evan. So Evan, before we head out here, man, do you have any final words before we shove off till the next episode?
No, not really. I mean, it's gonna be a crazy 2 weeks. Possibly the biggest 2 weeks that this franchise has had in a long time, because there's some big decisions to be made. Buckle up, I guess. Try not to drive yourself too crazy with everything. Just it's football, right? It's not life or death, no matter what happens. Don't get too worked up over it. Be nice to people on Twitter. Don't be it. Because seen plenty of cases of that already, and we're not even with a decision yet. So I know there's going to be people that hate the decision no matter what it is, and love the decision no matter what it is. So there's two sides to every sword, right? Or story, I should say.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for having me on, James. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words of the page and the podcast. Like I said, I hope you guys check out the page and the podcast. James has been on the podcast a bunch, and I hope to be making more appearances on this show as well. So.
Yes, sir. And by the way, guys, for everybody who does already follow Evan, he made a post saying, keep those notifications on for Instagram, because it's about to get wild, and it is. We're going to be very, very busy on all social media platforms. If you're a podcast, if you're an Instagrammer, if you're a YouTuber, we're all going to be pretty busy. So all the support for all of us Buccaneers content creators would be greatly appreciated, because at the end of the day, we're all a community. We're all hanging out, having a great time. So guys, thanks so much for watching this video. If you do want to submit questions for the next episode of the MBN Mailbag, go ahead and send an email to MrBucsNation@gmail.com. MrBucsNation.com with what your question is. But guys, thanks so much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. But until the next video or the next live stream, I'll see you guys in the next one. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.